Hello, everyone. We are back for our final topic before the last project for the course, which are your lesson plans. And so, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Parent Trap. It's an old movie, but then there was a remake, and I think there's even been another remake. But anyway, so I've incorporated that into the topic for this title, the Parent and the Administration Trap here. Got to be careful. So this component of the course is 100% dependent on your particular situation with your school, your community, your administration, your students, your parents, and how you fit into the mix of all that as a classroom teacher. The authors of our textbook, Bergman and Sams, touched on these concepts, parents and administrators, but didn't really go very in depth with them. As they put it, they didn't seem to have much resistance to either area, or in either area there, administrators or parents. They were pretty free to do what they wanted to do within their classrooms in terms of their administration and didn't really get much feedback from parents. And so, allow me to maybe share a little different story with you here. In my first attempt at flipping my classroom, it was a pre calculus class made up of mostly juniors and seniors at the high school level. For the most part, very strong students, but there were always a few, right, that fully expect the class to kind of revolve completely around their individual desires and the way they think it should be run. And honestly, this has to do with a little bit of our traditional methods. They were very used to being spoon fed the information and holding somebody holding their hands through the course materials and those kinds of things. They were not real good at independent learning, or some of that anyway. It's not independent learning, but you know what I mean in terms of the flipped model. So now, mind you, that this was around 2012 or so, and so I was kind of maybe a little bit ahead of the curve, not compared to our authors, but anyway. And so, about 3 months into the school year, I get an email from my principal superintendent at the time that there had been a parent complaint about the way that I was running my class, and that I needed to meet with one of the vice principals about it. Now, I happened to at the time have the type of administration that when there was one parent complaint, then I needed to change what I was doing because it was wrong. And so let me encompass this with that phrase there and that concept. It turns out that there were three girls, all friends in the class, that were not liking the way that the class was going. And they let their parents know about that. And even though it was not directly said to me, and this has always been a phrase of mine, that if you think I'm doing a good job, then please tell my boss. If I'm not doing a good job, please come to me first and let me talk with you and possibly make changes from there. But anyway, this was the first I heard about it. And so, even though it wasn't directly said to me, stop what you're doing and go back to a traditional method of teaching was pretty highly inferred from that meeting. After another email from the principal and another meeting with the vice principal, it was pretty clear that I needed to change the way that I was teaching the class. I'd been trying to kind of take the pulse of the students throughout the months that we've been doing this, and most of the students were the vast majority of them were certainly liking the process that we were doing and so on. But unfortunately, one of these three girls happened to be the math department chair's daughter, and in my opinion, she was not necessarily an extremely strong math student, even though there was pressure to be that and so on. And so she needed more hand holding and those kinds of things. But again, it was never brought to me before this. It was all just taken through administration. And so it ended up being that it created a scenario where at the end of the school year, I was notified that I would no longer be teaching this course. It was my first year or second year teaching it. And I think it was my first year, and I put a ton of time into preparing the materials, videos, all that kind of stuff, that I would not be teaching that class anymore. And in fact, I would be teaching some of the lowest math classes that we taught on our campus. And so it was not a pretty scene. And so I caution you on making sure that you do the best you can to kind of think this process through a little bit, and maybe a little bit more than what our authors are kind of giving the impression of. And maybe you have a need for that in your area. Again, completely dependent on your school and scenario and your teaching and all that kind of stuff. But let's take a look at what some of the precursory things are that you might want to put in place in order to head off any ugly scenes from your future, or at least make them less likely to happen. Maybe you can never tell with parents and administrators. So And even though it was reported the next fall that I had the highest test scores that year within the math department, from my pre-calc classes anyway, second highest of any teacher on a school site and among the highest in our county for that subject, didn't matter. Didn't satisfy my frustration, certainly, over the drama that had ended up taking place the previous school year, and it certainly didn't make up for losing that class. But anyway, so first you need to figure out how to handle your administration in this situation. If your administration is the type that has their hands off of the methodology that you use in your classroom, to where as long as you're producing good test scores or not causing problems or whatever their concerns are, and you feel like you can run with this change without even meeting with them, then that's a great place to be. And again, this was all pre-COVID, and it all had to do with kind of the general atmosphere on my campus. I thought was kind of that way, but apparently not when it came to this. And so COVID may have changed this one way or the other. Actually, I've heard from some teachers that parents are much more not wanting things to be online and so on. And so it just kind of depends again on your scenario. And so for if you might potentially have a problem here, then again, we need to try to head this off as best we can. So all I'm saying is that maybe you should have a conversation with your administrator, whoever that might be, vice principal, principal, whatever that might be, about having a conversation about what the flipped classroom model is, what it ensues, and all those kinds of things. Only you can decide if that's the best thing for your situation. Again, maybe you have an administration that you can just do what you want to do. Or maybe I've heard from many teachers that their administration is trying to emphasize the flipped classroom. So you already know you're okay. But I'm not sure the old adage of better to ask forgiveness later than to ask permission beforehand comes into play here or not. You have to kind of figure that out. So let's say you decide it would be best to have a conversation with an administration or administrator before you go too much further with this work involved in flipping your classroom. Here are some questions that you might want to ask your administration. Is this particular administrator likely to be familiar with the concept of the flipped classroom and maybe you already know what their impression is of it and so on, kind of like I mentioned a minute ago. Maybe let this administrator know that you'll be sending out a letter to the parents. It's one of the things we're going to talk about next. And assuming that no parents complain or in a reasonable amount of time after the letter is sent out, or offer any substantial reason why this would not be a good methodology in your classroom, then do you have their word that they will support you, back you with concerted efforts to serve your students well by using the flipped classroom pedagogy? Number 3, if the administration were to get some parent complaints about the way that you're teaching your class, how would they handle those? How would you handle those complaints together? Number 4, are there other options for students at your particular school site? If the flip model is not working for them, such as is there maybe a possibility of taking the class from another teacher? And again, that's a whole nother political bailiwick. But anyway, maybe an option. Will there be overall support? What will be the overall support level that you can expect from administration in the process of flipping your classroom? And then my last one that I have listed is there some type of orientation for parents and students maybe that could take place in order to help parents understand the reasons and pedagogy behind the flipped classroom model in order to avert potential problems later. So maybe an open house scenario, maybe you just have an open forum time that you invite parents that have concerns to come and talk in your classroom at off an evening time or whatever. Just throwing that out there as an idea as well. I believe that part of the decision-making process here is how committed you are to the idea of flipping your classroom and making sure that it will be a success before you even start. So the next issue is attempting to inform and instruct your students' parents about the flipped classroom concept and what the advantages are to their child going through a course using this method, and maybe what some of the challenges are. Or maybe you would prefer to get your parents on board first before you go see an administrator. Again, you have to kind of think through these things. Again, all of this is entirely up to you in your particular situation. Several different ways to inform your parents of what you're intending to do with this class. And so this is what our next assignment within this topic is going to be. To create a message to parents and discuss your thoughts on talking with an administrator. Those are the 2 assignments specifically for this. So maybe you feel like you could express your thoughts to your parents in words the best. And so maybe in a letter that could be mailed out or an email that can be sent out to parents of prospective students that you know you're going to have next year, next semester, whatever it might be in this particular class. And explain to them why it's the best situation for student learning for your particular class, and the methodology that you're going to be using there. Or maybe it would be better or easier for you, or whatever, for you to create a video for them to watch that would explain the process. So you need to think through how you want to communicate that to parents. Maybe it's a presentation that you're going to do at open house or back to school night or something before that, or whatever. I'm open to whatever method that you want to use to get this information across, as long as you do cover the kind of the gambit specified within the assignment for the course. I just want you to think through all those different possibilities for that. And so what I have for you on the next page after this video within Moodle are some examples of letters from other teachers, just brainstorming, just to give you guys some ideas of what you might want to include in yours, and some examples of videos that other teachers have created. And so again, maybe just spark some ideas of what you want to say to your parents and so on. And so check those out. And the two assignments for this section are to create that parent notification, however you want to do that. And then the forum is, did you or did you not need to have a discussion with an administrator? And if you did, what did you share about that? If not, why do you think you didn't need to? So looking forward to hearing from you on those, and then leading into our lesson plans next.